Garden Express are Australia's leading mail ordering service, offering a wide range of quality gardening products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show, you jump online and visit their website.
Hello, welcome to the Garden Gurus Live. Hi, I'm Trevor Cochran. It's great to have you with us today. Now, I have got a lot of questions coming through already, and that's what we're here to do today, is to answer your gardening questions. And we've got some photographs, we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming through. Remember, the best question for the day gets a $50 gift voucher from Garden Express. Garden Express, of course, is where you can shop online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they deliver direct to your door. It's a really good prize. Well worthwhile getting your questions in. So flood them in now. Keep Shaylee busy. It's just myself and Shaylee today. We've got some really cool things that we'll be talking about through the day. I'm going to show you. There's a couple of favourite plants of mine out of my garden. I just went and grabbed a couple of little snippets of them and then stuck them under Shaylee and Jess's nose. Do you know that one? It is beautifully fragrant. One of my favourites. And then there's this one, which I just had to, it was hanging across my driveway, so I had to cut this little particular branch off. But I've got two of these at home. One of them is massive and full of fruit. Do you know this fruit? Do you know how good it is? It's delicious. And certainly as kids, one that I would spend a lot of time sitting in a tree, picking them off and enjoying, usually eating too many of them and suffering for it. One of the downsides to this particular tree is that, or this particular fruit, is it doesn't last very long. I'll talk about all of that a bit further on in today's show, of course, answering all your garden questions. And Christine, you are on fire. You're absolutely right. 2 out of 2. Okay, let's talk about things other than just my garden. But in my garden at the moment, I've got some very, very beautiful gerberas. And it just so happens I brought it up with our friends at Garden Express. Rowan's with us this morning. I hope he's going to be able to join me. But Rowan, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Very good. How's the weather in Melbourne?
It's raining again.
Really?
It's gloomy. We had a 26 degree day the other day on Tuesday, I think it was, and it's rained every day since.
You know, when I'm across there and it rains all day, non-stop all day, what's that thing that you say to me every single time? You should have been here yesterday.
Oh yes, I do. I do say that, and that's exactly
beautiful.
Right. It's exactly what it's like. So yeah, it's been a steady stream of rain for the last 2 days. So
do you know what? It's fantastic for gardens, though. This is going to extend the spring on. And you know, look, when you're looking at you know, there was a month or so there we had very, very little rainfall, so things had started to dry out. Yeah. This is really going to be great for gardens and maintaining all the hard work that's been done in the beginning of spring. Mate, just out of interest, I know that the weekend is planned for a lot of people, but do you have a big weekend ahead? And is it because there's no sport now at the moment in Melbourne?
No, that's right.
People can get into the garden. Is the weather going to be half decent for gardening?
I think it's supposed to be getting better. I don't know if it's going to be quite as nice as what everyone would hope for a weekend, but I think it's definitely going to be better, and the rain's not going to be turning on as much, which is good. So it is going to be a perfect time to get out there in the garden. Okay,
so let's talk about the garden at the moment. In my garden, I have got a few absolute highlights. Lavender is one of them. Mm-hmm. Hippeastrums are just starting to pop. I've got a couple that are popped flowers now, and they're looking magnificent.
I was wandering around up in the specialty houses yesterday, actually, and there's a few hippies in certain beds that have come up and are looking amazing. We might share some of those on socials a little bit later.
Yeah, I think it's that sort of flower. You know, roses, absolutely incredible. But one of the plants that is just starting to come through, and they're all in bud. They're not in flower in my garden at the moment, but
Yeah.
they will be pretty soon. Are gerberas.
Gerberas, yes.
And they're not an easy plant to get your hands on. They're actually quite a challenge at times. But you guys,
I think in the past we've been able to get our hands on the Garvinia style, which are the much smaller, types of gerberas. But what we're offering now is, the proper cut flower. These plants are all bred for cut flowers, so we're actually able to offer the viewers plants that are prolifically flowering, and the ones that are going to get the really nice tall stems. You see some of that in the vision there.
Yeah, cut flowers are really difficult to get your hands on.
Yeah, and they're pretty easy to grow, to be honest. So it surprises me that they are as hard as they are to get hold of. But obviously, people are just keeping them. The growers and the breeders are keeping them because they can make so much out of the flowers.
That's right.
Yeah,
because the flowers are quite expensive to buy in a florist just as a cut flower.
Yeah.
But the reason I mentioned roses before was because we often, when we're looking in the garden, some plants grow really well together. It's not just that they look good together. They've got a symbiotic relationship. There's something, the roots connect or something happens, and they're very complementary to each other. Roses and gerberas are really good examples of that.
Yeah, they are. And probably best of all, at the moment, we've got our hands on a lot of different colours and shapes. So ruffled types, bold types, the whole lot. And we've put together some really, really nice collections. Before we go into that, I just wanted to show, because you mentioned that they're just sort of coming into bud. This is what we're sending out to customers. So they're actually getting a plant that, I don't know if you can quite see there, but there's some new growth. So these will be a little ways off flowering, but this is what you're going to get. So the collections that we've put together are collections of 3 plants. We've got 6 different collections, and you'll get 3 plants of that sort of quality. I'm just going to pull it out of the tube because I wanted to show people. They come in what we call a grow cell.
Oh, yeah.
So that's like, you can't really see it on the vision, but that's like a really fine net that can go straight into the ground, and the gerbil will grow straight from that.
Right.
We just pop it in a forestry tube to protect it a little bit, and then it goes in our purpose-made blister packs, as we've showed you guys before. So they're well and truly looked after in the mail, and they'll come ready to go straight into the ground.
Brilliant, mate. So let's talk about these collections, because you have got them as collections. So you've got a ruffle collection, wildfire collection, and pretty in pink collection.
Yes, and then there's a bold collection and also a strawberries and cream collection.
And you've got bicolor as well.
And a bicolor, I believe. So one that's got three plants that have got some nice bicolors in them as well.
So that's a really, really good collection. It's very hard to get your hands on that number of different varieties. So let's talk about, there's 3 plants in each collection.
3 plants in each collection. They are generally $38.70 for the 3 plants. So if you bought them all individually, that's what you would pay. Right. And for Guru's viewers, we've popped a 20% saving on those down to $30 per collection, which is a real bargain.
That's a pretty darn good deal for actual varieties. Now, some people you can buy those cheaper, the smaller flowered versions, the hot color version. But when you're going for something that is a proper named variety, specifically for cut flowers, and lovely big long stems, it doesn't take long. I'm trying to remember what they are. I think they're about $4 per flower, or $5 per flower in a florist.
Yeah, that sounds about right, Trev. That's what you're kind of going to pay. So you're going to get your money back on a $30 for 3 plants pretty quickly.
Okay. Well, look, you know what? I'd imagine that this is going to be a bit of a problem for you, because I would think they are going to sell out pretty darn quick. Have you got a lot of stock?
Yeah, we've got a fair bit. It's not huge. Like we don't have huge numbers. It's definitely not a never-ending thing. We've got a fair bit. We've got a lot of variety. So you'll see there from the collections if you jump online that there's a fair bit of variety as far as colour.
Yeah.
You can buy the plants individually for $12.90, and there's a fair few other colours that we've got that aren't included in the collection.
Okay.
But the numbers for each colour are relatively
Limited.
small,
Yeah.
but there's a fair bit there. But I would recommend getting in pretty quickly.
Okay. All right. Well, look, it's good advice, mate. Now, look, of course, the great thing about Garden Express can shop with you guys 24/7. It doesn't matter what time of day or night,
Yeah.
or any of that sort of thing. And of course, you deliver direct to people's doors.
Yeah, that's exactly. So direct to the door. If you jump online, gardenexpress.com.au, there's a big banner that will take you straight to the Gerberas section. You can have a look at those collections. Look out for the show on the weekend, obviously, because it's a good one. Yeah, they're there, they're down. We've got them here. They're ready to go. They'll be starting to get shipped out on Monday.
I would think that there's not going to be many left available after this show, mate, because they are a real collectible item. So thanks for getting those for us, Rowan. You guys, you're obviously pretty busy at the moment. It's springtime. I know that orders have been going off like crazy. What's your top 3 selling lines at the moment?
Still dahlias, still dahlias, absolutely. We had a small number of hollyhocks earlier in the week, and they sold out overnight, so they were very, very popular.
Wow.
And hippies, of course, is well up there. We're actually right in the middle of our dahlia crop. It might be worth one of these weeks if we can work out if we can get the phone working up there, because it's really interesting to see how we go about doing that, and then planting them back out at the farm ready for next season's crop.
Amazing. Rowan, we've got people writing into us from all over the place. Graham Kelso is actually in Kathmandu in Nepal at the moment. He's heading home to Melbourne today, and he said it's good to know that it's going to be nice and wet when he gets home. His garden's getting a drink.
Yeah, and a good drink too. So he's from Melbourne. A good solid drink, which is what the garden needs this time of year.
That's interesting, isn't it? We've got people tuning in from all over the world. Mate, great deal. Thank you very much. Of course, folks, gardenexpress.com.au, get online, get them while you can, because they won't.
Get in quickly, because I'm not expecting there to be too much left early next week.
Yeah. All right, mate. Hey, listen, have a great weekend. Thanks for joining.
Mate. Yeah, you too. See you.
All right. Now, we have got, I'm just looking at the comments flying through. We've got people coming in from all over the country. Please remember, when you do send your question in, tell us where you're from. It does help me when I am working on giving you some answers, and I do want to give you lots and lots of answers. Just so you know, that is absolutely correct. That is yesterday, today, tomorrow. Christine, I think you named it first. Brunsfelsia, it used to be called Brunsfelsia latifolia. This one now known as Brunsfelsia porcifolia, I think, if it hasn't changed again already. One of the great things about this is that the flowers change colour every single day. Yesterday, they were that colour. Today, they are that colour. And tomorrow, they're going to be the white. And that's the beauty about them. But one of the things that I love about this particular plant, I have 2 of them as you enter into the front door of my house. I have them in garden beds on either side, is the fragrance, and particularly at night, they're incredibly fragrant. It's a beautiful perfume, and it's a bit of an old-fashioned collectible plant. They're not that commonly available, but boy, oh boy, good addition to any garden. I'll talk about locusts a little bit later on, because you also got that one right. Thanks, Christine. Okay, let's fly through these questions, because there are a lot of them. Let's go through some with photographs. Actually, just before we do, I'll tell you what, there's a good point here. A lot of people are asking, how do we actually get the photographs up? Well, here's the solution. This is how you do it. Maybe. Have you got a gardening question you'd like us to answer and you need to send us a photo? Well, simply head to our Facebook page and click on message. Type out your question and click the camera icon to take a photo in the app. Or click the image option and select the image you want to send us. Be sure to allow Facebook access to your camera and camera roll. We check our messages regularly, so sit back and be sure to tune in to the Garden Gurus Facebook Live show every Friday, and you'll hear your answer. Okay, well, I'm just checking out some of the things that we've got. I actually did a story yesterday in my garden and discovered these amazing seeds from Yates. Now, I'll bring them up. But they've got this incredible collection of heirloom varieties. And if you're planting out veggies, and I know that there's actually some flowers in their collection as well, it's a cool seed packet to grow. I'm really impressed with the fact that they brought some of these back. Romanesco broccoli has been one of my big success stories during the winter and early spring. And now I'm about to change, and I'm thinking I'm going to put beans in. So remembering when you're planting, alternate your crops as much as you can. So, Shadi did a good job in pulling together how to get your photos up. Hopefully that makes it a little bit easier. In the meantime, how about we get through some of these photographs, because there are a lot of good questions, and here's a few photographs. Jeannie Napier is one. Hello, Jeannie. You're in Perth, of course. What do I have to do to get my blue wisteria to bloom like my white one? You can see the white one there is magnificent. The blue one is in a pot. The white one is on a pergola. And there lies the answer to your question. So wisteria flower, when their root system is mature, it's a really odd way to sort of look at things, but it's actually how it works. So what they do is they need to get their root system right out. It doesn't matter whether they're white or a blue or any of the types. Once the root system's established, you'll suddenly see them start producing spectacular displays of flower. And when it's in a pot, it can never really get its root system out. It will flower, but it's never going to flower like the white one. So I suppose the thing that I would say to you is that if there's an opportunity on the other side of the pergola to send the blue up, you might end up being able to cover over the top and have blue on one side and white on the other and enjoy the best of both worlds. Hopefully that helps, Jeannie. It's a good question. Thank you. Kim Godin, you sent us some photographs. Something is happening with my roses. Let's have a look at this. An interesting one. This is a bud borer, and it's a little worm, a little caterpillar that's eating in all the soft tissue in those petals before the flower can even open. So you do need to be spraying this, and there is a great general rose spray from Yates that will knock this one around. So I think it's called the Yates Rose Gun, and it's a little trigger pack, so an RTU, ready to use, sprayed over the foliage, particularly over the flowers right now. And it'll also help with some of those pests, things like thrips, etc. Aphids are obviously everywhere. These are the challenges that we have. Now, Shaylee is from Perth. It's an unusual name. You don't often hear somebody called Shaylee. I'm wondering if it's the same Shaylee from the office here. I'm sure it is. She's been battling a few bug problems. Earwigs destroyed her parsley. And now she's got these worm-like bugs which are wrapping themselves in leaves. What is it? Let's have a look here. Okay, so this worm-like bug is, it's actually different ones. So you've got a few different ones there. You need a general insecticide, Shaylee. And all of the caterpillars are highly susceptible to the bacterial-based insecticide. So Success or Dipel will do the world of good. And I would suggest probably Success because it's a little bit broader in its application and what it treats. So yeah, easy solution. And talk about taking advantage of your being in control of the broadcast, Shaylee. That's very cheeky. Catalina Villa, Lakes Entrance in Victoria. Hello. I had a plum tree that died, but have one growing from the drip line. Let's have a bit of a look at this. Will that produce fruit one day, or should I just remove it? Do we have? No, we don't have a photo. Okay. Well, if it's growing from the drip line, but the parent tree has died, what you are seeing is the rootstock suckering up from probably a root moving across the surface of the soil. It will grow, but unfortunately, the bad news is it's going to be probably not exactly the nicest fruit. So my suggestion is you rip it out. If you really want a plum, then go and grab yourself another plum tree and plant it. Why it died is a good question. That's something you need to have a bit of a look at, and maybe pulling the existing tree out if it's not too big might give you some clues to what happened, because you'll see the root system and how it's looking. Okay, let's keep rolling along. There's a lot of questions where coming from all over the country at the moment. Mansfield, Victoria, Sheena, Dakin. Hello, Sheena. How often should I water my geraniums? You live in Mansfield, Victoria, got a lot of frosts. All right, well, once the frosts have abated, and you should be through frost by now, I would be hoping. Once they're gone, you should be watering them probably once every second or even third day, depending on how soft they are. Now, some varieties get quite soft, and in hot conditions, they'll wilt. Now, it's not a bad thing for them to wilt a little bit, because you do want them to harden for the summer. So what I would do is I'd probably work on a theory of watering every third day. And then my goal after that would be to make sure that if it's a really hot day and you're seeing them wilting, that you get the hose out and just give them a bit of a hand water. The idea is to try and harden them up as we get into summer. That'll make a big difference with regards to the health of the plant. Christine Rankin is, I think, on holidays at the moment in Port Douglas in Cairns. How's that? That sounds pretty good, Christine. You said good morning to myself and the team. Thank you. Good morning to you too. Hoping for some advice on my native frangipani. Now, have a look at these photos. This is really odd, Christine. I looked at it and went, I do not know why you've got that big split in the bark. It is very unusual. So you can see off the photo on my left-hand side of screen, you'll see that there is something definitely caused a major split in that bark. And it looks to me more like it's some kind of mechanical thing, so something physical that's caused that in preference to an insect. It's definitely not an insect. It's definitely not a disease in my mind. So I am not sure exactly what's going on there. The one thing you can do, and you've mentioned it here, is that you can cut native frangipani back. In fact, they're an incredibly resilient plant. The more you cut them back, the bushier they get, and so the more flower you end up getting. So it's it might be that thing. I don't think that split's going to get any worse. I think that was something physical that's happened to that, is my gut feel. I'm not really 100% sure, but anyway, let's see how you go, Christine, and enjoy your holiday whilst you're over there. What a great part of the world. Barb Patullo, hello, Red Cliffs in Victoria. Barb, what have we got here? I've got problems with my strawberries. They're in polystyrene boxes, but I'm having so much trouble with these little bugs that roll up in balls. How can I get rid of them as they're eating more than me? Okay, one of the interesting things that we have in gardening is we have what we would call bugs. They're not necessarily all insects. In this case, this particular one is a crustacean. Now, it's kind of known as Slater, and it's meant to be only eating organic material. But if there's a shortage of organics around the outside, it will go to soft succulent flesh. So often that's the new leaves of seedlings, and definitely the soft succulent flesh of strawberries. So you have this problem that we need to get on top of, and it's not an easy one to treat. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. A completely natural way is to take, squeeze a couple of orange halves, pop them face down on the ground in and amongst your strawberries. These guys will go to that soft flesh before they'll go to the strawberries. Once you get, and you do it just on dusk, because that's when they're feeding, when they're most active and feeding, they'll go and start eating that. Come back about half an hour, 45 minutes later, pick them up, pop them into a plastic bag, tie it in a knot, pop them to one side, and you'll reduce your populations down. So you should reduce that. If you want to use a chemical control, and I'm going to tell you something about strawberries and chemicals, and peaches are another one, then you can use bran baits, and you can put them around the outside of the trays, but don't put them on the inside, because I think the active ingredient in bran bait is carbaryl, which is a pretty effective control of these pests, but it is a toxic chemical, a very high schedule. What you've got to be careful of, and this is a really important thing for everybody to always consider when you are spraying. A lot of the chemicals we're seeing available these days are very low toxicity, which is great, but they still kill things. They're toxic enough to kill insects, so ingesting those things is not good. And there are some fruit that are super absorbent. They have the capacity of absorbing in chemicals and holding them for a period of time. Strawberries is one of those fruits. So you do have to be very, very careful with strawberries, that you're not really spraying them with insecticides, because they will absorb very quickly into the fruit, and of course you're going to digest that, and that's the last thing you want to have in your body. So be very careful with how you're doing it. I would go for the organic thing with the orange halves. Tends to be the best way to do it. Hopefully that helps. Inga Colm, hello. How do I keep possums off my roses? Inga, it's a big problem, and it's one that occurs quite regularly, or we get questions quite regularly here, particularly from people in Victoria, where possums really have invaded the suburbs in a big way, and then they start eating all of your favorite plants, and particularly the new growth or flowers of roses are particularly delicious. Now, possums have very sensitive noses. They're not really, they don't really like that there, because they're night active, their senses are highly tuned. So one way that you can get them off your favorite plants is get the hose out late afternoon. When you've wet down all the plants that you want to protect, go and dust them with white pepper. Get the white pepper, not black pepper, white pepper, and dust over the foliage of the plant. Now, when they come close, it actually gets up their nose and forces them to sneeze. So you'll literally hear the possums outside sneezing. So it acts as a bit of a repellent for them. The only downside to this thing is that it'll be effective for 3 or 4 days. And by then, hopefully they've moved on and they've got no interest in that plant anymore at all. But if you keep doing it, they then become tuned into pepper. And sooner or later, they might take a liking to it, or certainly it won't affect them the same way. So you do need to be a little bit on the careful side. Use it occasionally, and that'll do a job. Yeah, interesting problem, and one that a lot of people will be relating to. Nikki Probert, hello Nikki, how are you? You're in Tassie. It's still quite cold at the moment. What's the best mulch to use in a veggie garden? Wanting it purely to keep a bit of warmth around the base, some of the smaller plants. Still quite cold overnight, as you pointed out. Now look, to be quite honest, if you want a mulch that's going to warm the soil and to really get I suppose get the soil healthy at the same time, pea straw, lucerne, hay, spread over the top of the soil, and then chicken manure on top. Now the chicken manure is going to, the rawness of it, the ammonia that's in it, it's going to fast track the breakdown of that straw. And it's the perfect time to massively enrich the health of your soil by creating this instant compost. As it's composting, it's warming the soil, so it'll kickstart your plant's growth. They'll be about a month ahead of where they would be within just a few weeks if you do that this weekend. It's a bit of a different way to go, but boy oh boy, does it improve the quality of the soil, and it really does make a big difference with regards to the health of the plant as well, and the growth, because the soil is warmer. Most people don't realize that it's actually the soil temperature more than it is the external air temperature that affects the growth of many of the warmer climate plants. So things like coconuts just won't grow where soil temperatures get below 10 degrees Celsius. So it's always got to be warm. Once it gets cold, they really do struggle. There are the odd exceptions, but not many. Hopefully that helps, Nikki. Now let's keep rolling over. Marcia Blake, hello. You're not sure, you're in Harvey. Okay. What kind of process would I recommend for slowly converting grassed area into a food forest, please? You're in Harvey, planted a lot of fruit trees, but they're still young, got a couple of raised garden beds, but still building the layers and fighting the grass currently. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to keep building the layers. When it comes to the trees, you just got to keep the grass off the base of the trees. They're competing, basically. The grass is competing for nutrients. So if you can keep the grass away to the drip line, what you're going to find is that all the nutrients that sit within that area under the shaded area of the tree, they're going to be taken up by the plant. And that's a really important thing. The key with the whole thing is actually getting as much growing as you can. Now, if you leave them separate, let's say 5 meter plantings or 4 meter plantings between trees, what you're going to find is it'll be a long, slow growth period. If you've got some varieties that you can get quite quickly and plant them close together in groups, your food forest is going to grow a lot faster. That competition between plants works really well. We have got lots and lots and lots of questions. I'm trying to pick where we go next. Hopefully that helps, Marcia. King Low, hello, mate. How are you? Pretty old. You've got a pretty old potted gardenia which has never flowered for years, despite feeding it with the correct fertilizer for gardenias and azaleas. What have I not done right? It mainly gets morning sun. It's really interesting. It should be full of buds right now, King, if it's going to produce flowers right now. If you don't have them, if you don't have any buds, liquid fertilizing, and there is a product called Thrive for Fruit and Flowers. It is a liquid. It's absorbed in through the foliage, and often within pots, there's just not enough energy to sustain it. Sometimes the plants will flower really, really well because they're feeling threatened, if you like. They're at risk of dying when you get extremes, when the roots are contained. But in this particular instance, it's probably more about having enough potash and phosphorus in the soil to trigger that flowering process. So my recommendation is that you get yourself some Thrive for fruit and for flowers, and you liquid feed it over the foliage. And let's have a look. Do it for maybe once a week for a month, and have a look at the plant at the end of that month. Even take a photograph now, and then have a look at that photograph in a month's time, or compare the two photographs alongside each other and have a look and see what it looks like. I'd love to see the results, but I think you'll find that'll trigger the flowering process. Okay, let's have a look. Jeannie Napier. Hello, Jeannie. You're in Beachborough, which is over here in Western Australia. My strawberries are really fruiting so well. I've fertilized, well-watered, good soil, even given them a dose of Epsom salts, but they're not sweet. So how can I sweeten them? That's interesting. Epsom salts won't sweeten them, but sulfate of potash will. It does assist in sweetening the fruit. Interestingly enough, the sun is the other thing. So as long as they're getting lots and lots of sun and you're not picking them until they're fully ripe, you will find that you'll get a lot sweeter. The sugars do convert with more sunlight. So maybe have a bit of a think about that as well. If they're in pots, move them into a sunny spot. If they're not, sulfate of potash, good way to sweeten. Andrea Potter, you live in Melbourne. You're trying to grow mandarin tree in a potted half wine barrel. They always look sickly and don't produce good mandarins. What am I doing wrong? Mandarins can be a bit hard in the younger stages. You need to be growing them in the best quality soil you possibly can. And because it's in a wine barrel, a half wine barrel, you need to be feeding on a regular basis. Now, I wouldn't be recommending that you use one of those fast release citrus fertilizers. I would be recommending, so don't do that. What I would be recommending is that you use a controlled release one. There's that one from Trevor for fruit and flowers, and it does a really good job at encouraging that regular growth and ultimately, obviously, sweet fruit when it comes around. You should be seeing that plant going into flower just at the moment too, by the way. Hopefully it is. Sharon Adele Lavis, you're in Hervey Bay in Queensland. Hello. What is the best way to fertilize and best pest control to maintain a healthy elephant ear, staghorn and elkhorn? I think there's three here. Okay, so staghorns and elkhorns are ferns. And one of the simplest things is that they don't require huge amounts of fertilizer, but they do respond exceptionally well to fish emulsion, believe it or not. It's one of those plants that just loves the old fish emulsion. When it comes to elephant ears, feeding them with a high nitrogen fertilizer, I'm always telling you not to do that, but in this case, it's a foliage plant. And so a high nitrogen fertilizer is going to, one, make them a lot darker green, and two, it's going to encourage bigger leaves. Now, you can buy that in various forms. General fertilizers generally have a higher nitrogen content as it is. But I just talked about the Thrive for fruit and flowers, but the traditional Thrive is very high in nitrogen. So it encourages really good leaf growth. And if you were to water that at the moment over the foliage of your elephant ears, you'll find that it'll produce, one, a lot more foliage, two, that foliage will be bigger, and three, all of the foliage will turn a beautiful dark green color. So fish emulsion for the ferns, for the stags and the elks, and obviously making sure that the elephant here is getting the right fertilizer for it. Mert Pascal, hello, you're in East Gippsland. How are you? That's been a bit of a challenging area, Gippsland, in the last couple of weeks. You've had fires, you've had floods. It's crazy, isn't it? Let me have a bit of a look. You've got a magnolia. Can it be shifted? It's in the shade and it's not flowering. Okay. The answer is yes, they can be. If you're going to do it now. There's two types of magnolias or two groups of magnolias. There's evergreen and there's deciduous. Deciduous are a lot better to move during the winter months when they're dormant. But both could be moved now. You just have to make sure you keep the moisture up to them. You get as much of the root system out as you can in one hit. When you do it, one of the tricks of transplanting is to have some hessian or a tarp. And as soon as you get that plant out onto the ground, you pop it on top of a tarp, or as I said before, hessian's a good alternative. And you hold as much of the soil as you possibly can together around the roots. You don't let that soil come off. Move it to its new home. Ease it back into the soil gently. Water with some sea salt. Pack it with some good soil, not fertilizer, not compost, but just good soil. And hopefully they will recover and grow away pretty quickly. The evergreens are pretty good like that. They can be a little bit more sort of sensitive when they're deciduous varieties. So hopefully that helps you, Mert. Megan, you're in Sydney. Hello, I've got a standard iceberg rose that has a shoot growing away from the base. If I plant this, will it grow into a bush rose or should it be thrown away? It should be pulled away from the base of the plant. Do not cut it. Pull it away. It's a sucker and it is the rootstock and it will be no real value. It'll be a spring flowering variety. There's a few different types, but they all flower once in spring. And look, it's the rootstock. It's there to be a very vigorous bush rose, a rambler, if you like. So get it off, pull it off, and don't cut it off because otherwise you're going to encourage it to branch out and produce more. So pull it away. Lynn Winstanley, hello. Every week you join us, Lynn. It's great. Really love having you with us. You're in Claremont now. I'm hoping to transplant my frangipani from its large pot into the ground. Is now the right time to do it? How should I prepare the soil to ensure that it survives? It's about 2.5 meters tall. Now is the perfect time to do it, Lynn. And to be quite honest, a little bit of soil conditioner going into the hole once you've dug it. That hole should be twice as big as the size of the pot that it's in at the moment. And when you basically fill it, you put a bit of soil conditioner in the bottom, put the plant in on top, obviously out of its pot, and sit it down there. If the roots are really bound around the base, just tease them out just so that they sit flat on the ground, heading that way, not wrapping around, and then refill with a little bit of soil conditioner, mix 50-50 with the existing soil. Give it a good water, it will take off and do really, really well. And this is the time of the year to do it. Best time. Wendy Fox, you're in Brizzy. Why do I think your camellias are covered in buds, but most never seem to open? It's a bit of a problem. The reason plants drop buds and they don't open is because they, more often than not, run out of energy. So they start growing, they set the number of flowers they're going to produce, and then they run out of moisture or they run out of energy. So keeping the moisture up to them, keeping the fertilizer up to them at the moment to support that growth, to keep pushing the sap through, which is going to push those flowers out to open up, that's the key. And what often happens is we literally see all the buds form, we hold our breath waiting for them to open, and we're not supporting that continuous growth. What happens is after a while, the plant will say, well, look, actually, there's not as much moisture coming through. There's not as much nutrient available. I'm just going to drop a whole bunch of those buds and I'll only open a few of the flowers. It's a completely natural process and camellias are particularly good at doing it. So give them a feed. And again, liquid fertilizer over the foliage at the moment, really good thing to do. Won't hurt at all. Shelley Fox, hello. You're from Brisbane. Again, now Shelley, I was wondering if there are any tips to help keep my buffalo lawn and some cooch as we're experiencing extended dry period with no good rain due until next year. Situated just north of Brisbane and you've only got a rainwater tank, right? It's a big challenge. There is a product that I use. I have a certain time of the year when my garden just gets dry. Perth in many ways, like North Queensland, in that we do have months of dry weather, sometimes no rain at all for 3 or 4 months. I have irrigation and I have a good water supply, but I still find that the lawn in certain areas will start to dry out, and you just can't keep the moisture up in that environment. So what's important is to make sure that the water that you do give gets into the soil, and if you can help the plant fight the stress, you're going to do it a huge favor. So further to that particular angle, if you had seaweed extract and a brilliant liquid wetting agent and applied it over the lawn, you'd do really well. And that's what that sea salt wetting agent is. It's a combination of sea salt and a really good, I think the best wetting agent actually you can get. So I think it's really probably time to do that. And you've got to water it over with a watering can. Maybe get the hose out afterwards, just wash it in, make sure that it's in the soil, but it's going to make sure that moisture stays in the soil longer, and the sea soil will make sure that the lawn doesn't stress too badly during extended dry periods. Hopefully that helps. I think we're going to run our clip on how to post your photos one more time. We're getting a few people still asking that question. Shall we do that? Okay, we're going to do it. Here it comes. Have you got a gardening question you'd like us to answer and you need to send us a photo? Well, simply head to our Facebook page and click on message. Type out your question and click the camera icon to take a photo in the app. Or click the image option and select the image you want to send us. Be sure to allow Facebook access to your camera and camera roll. We check our messages regularly, so sit back and be sure to tune in to the Garden Gurus Facebook Live show every Friday, and you'll hear your answer. Okay, well, we are continuing on with lots and lots of questions, but I thought maybe before we do that, might actually go to that particular odd fruit that I have, and it is an odd fruit. It is the easiest tree to grow, fruit tree of all the fruit trees. It is, of course, the locust. And these beautiful yellow fruit are absolutely delicious. You won't find them generally in fruit stalls because, unfortunately, they don't last very long after they've been picked, which is a bit of a shame because they are scrumptious. They've got in fact, they've got 3 or 4 big black seeds in them, and I'm trying to rip this open without. You can see the seed in there, but you can see the amount of flesh around the outside. The only other downside to this fruit is probably that the skin is a little bit on the tough side. So you tend to spit the skin out. But what a great tree to grow at home. Now, it grows really well from seed. So all you have to do is have a fruit, take the seed, pop it into a pot of just potting mix, and I'll guarantee you that within a year, you will have a small locust tree, and within 3 to 4 years, you'll be picking 10, 15 kilos of locusts. They really are incredibly productive. There are some varieties that you can buy that are select varieties that are guaranteed. So garden centres will be selling grafted locust trees for you. And if you don't want to grow it from seed, pop into your garden centre and ask for them. They originate from China, and one of the great things about this particular tree is it's incredibly tough. It grows in all sorts of conditions. It's incredibly water-wise. Once it's basically finished fruiting, you don't need to actually give it too much water. Definitely don't need to give it too much fertilizer, and it will produce great crops year in, year out. That is my fruit of the day because it is a really lovely tree. A big question that has come through is, can they grow in pots? They do grow in pots, but they do eventually end up being quite a decent tree. I've got one in one of our properties that's probably, I'm going to say it's 8 meters tall by probably 6 to 7 meters wide. And it would, at the moment, it would have north of, 2,000 or 3,000 fruit. It is just a sea of yellow. It's absolutely magnificent. So you do have to have a bit of room for it. You can contain them. So if you're going to grow it in pots, keep trimming it, but don't do it during the winter when it's setting fruit. That's my big bit of advice. Okay, let's keep rolling on. I'm just looking at all the questions that are coming through. Wendy Ann's in Canning Vale, which is over here in Perth. How hard can I prune my frangipani? You can prune it as hard as you like, Wendy Ann. They will bounce back. But when you're pruning, you should be thinking about the shape of the tree. If you're pruning it back to sort of just forks in the branches, you're going to end up with 3 or 4 shoots per cut. So you're going to end up with a very bushy frangipani tree. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, do it now. Sandy Jewel, why don't I get many flowers on my bright coloured frangipanis? They're 8 years old in Brisbane. Tends to be that frangipanis, when they have a high nitrogen source around the base of them, they don't produce as many flowers. The other thing about them is they do like it dry. So if they're getting a lot of moisture, often that will be releasing nutrients in the soil and they'll be growing quite strongly, and they don't need to necessarily produce a lot of flower. So a bit of a period of time keeping it dry, and you can do that a couple of ways. You can actually lay out some plastic around the base of the tree to stop moisture getting to those feeder roots. That can shock them. It can also help control weeds and stuff around the base. So there's a few things. Now, we do have a lot of questions coming through. It's absolutely flat out actually this morning. You're coming up with some really good ones. Let's go to Jay Mibus. You're in Victoria's Western Districts. Is there an insecticide that only kills the first generation target? A lot of wrens and frogs, etc., and I don't want to harm them. I would rather put up with the bugs and grubs than threaten the fauna that I like. It's also the same for snail and mouse bait that won't affect kookaburras and owls. Well, kookaburras shouldn't be eating snails, that's for sure, but unfortunately, mouse baits are a disaster when it comes to kookaburras and owls, because the mouse gets sick and then sort of literally comes out of its hidey hole generally and is then exposed. And of course, that's when they come through and predate them. And then they will get second generation poisoning. So what you're looking for something is that's going to hit them and take them out. There are some repellents when it comes to mice. You can do that. When it comes to things like snails, you can use copper spray. Copper spray, snails are mollusks. Mollusks have no tolerance to copper, so it's a good way to control it. When it comes to pests generally, probably the only thing I would suggest you consider are some of the bactericides. So Success, Dipel, they're going to do a good job on caterpillars, those chewers, but not too much to the suckers. And so that's really going to have to get down to something more along the lines of maybe a repellent like garlic, or well, garlic's actually probably one of the very best you can get, or chili is the other one. So hopefully that helps. It's a good question, very good question. K. Margaret Child, you're in Albany in WA. It's right down the south. It's absolutely beautiful. How do I revive lithops? Mine were okay when I bought them, but within 2 weeks they died. Now, one I watered sparingly, the other I only watered once when the soil looked dry. I thought they were easy care with a little watering, but they always seem to shrivel and die. I've had them indoors on a shelf near a window, but not in full sun. Then they looked sick, moved them to the window's edge. What did I do wrong? Can they be revived? Generally, when they start to go, it's bad news. It's not good news. Lithops are a really interesting little succulent, and there is a great little nursery called Owie's down Bunbury Way, so it's still a fair way away from you, Kay, but it's worthwhile taking a look at if you can, because it's a good little nursery that sells a lot of those rare and unusual plants, and that's really what I think you need to be looking for. I was going to say to you also that as far as the existing plants go, watering, it's meant to be, if it's in a small pot, it's meant to be a tablespoon every probably 2 days. So you do water them, but you don't want them saturated, and never let them never let them sit in water. So it's a pretty important thing. Okay, I'm just looking through some of our questions as they're coming through, because there's a lot. And that's great. Keep them coming. I will answer them for you. Let's have a look at where we're at here. Zephyricus, my dwarf lemon plant is yellowish. Not much growth for the spring. Should I add Epsom salts for the soil or anything else? Well, one is give them a good feed right now. Give them a good feed with an all-round general fertilizer. If it's a light, if it's a sort of a lightish color and it's not dark veins, then I would definitely look at something like Epsom salts. Epsom salts is magnesium sulfate, so that is going to give you some of the best results. I'm just having a look through. I think at the moment the important thing to remember, and I did this story for the Garden Gurus, and it's, I think, a really important story, is that when you look at all the fruit that citrus produce, and you realize that all of that's generated through stuff coming out of the ground, you need to replenish the organics in the ground, the carbon that's in there. You need to replenish the mineral nutrients that are in there. If you're not doing that, you are going to have a tree that will start to yellow before your very eyes. So this is more an indication to you, Zifa, and you came to us, you're in Sydney and you came to us through YouTube, which is great, but this is more an indication that you're not feeding your tree enough on a regular basis. So maybe using a controlled release and applying it every 3 to 4 months, so 3 to 4 times a year, you should see lots of growth. You should see lots of flower and fruit. You guys are really throwing the questions at us. There's a lot coming through. Carmel Della you're in Adelaide, in SA. I was wondering why my 2-year-old orange tree has lost all its leaves and flowers in 2 weeks and gone black on the tips. I did have it protected from the wind and with a mesh, and took it down about a month ago. It sounds to me like it is probably a little bit of that. And it's also probably a little bit of changing season, strong wind, and maybe it's lacking a little bit of nutrient. Another fertilizing job, I would suggest. Give it a good soaking around the base of it with some sea salt. That should help with the recovery of new growth and stimulate the roots. I'm just looking. I don't think there's anything else I can suggest to you at this point in time, other than maybe put the wind barrier back up just to protect it over the next month or two. Okay, Janet Egberts, you've sent us some photos. Just want to know what's wrong with my rose. Let's have a look. We're waiting. Here they are. Okay, this is a really interesting thing. It is a rose, and I took one look at it and I went, that has been exposed to glyphosate. So, you know, the herbicide glyphosate's a very common thing. Roses are super sensitive to it, and the first thing it does is it causes them to go all frizzy, and that's exactly what's happened here with the new growth. Now, it might grow out of that, but it probably won't, and this is why you've got to be very careful if you're still using glyphosate. Don't spray it on a windy day for a start, and don't allow it to ever come in contact with rose foliage. Otherwise, it's pretty much all over. They just can't handle it at all. Tina Elizabeth Rose, speaking of roses, but you're talking about strawberries. You've grown a lot of strawberries, beautiful size, no flavour. What am I doing wrong? Sulfate of potash. It will help. It will help. Now's the time to apply. You can sort of put some of those high potash liquid fertilizers, and I talked about Thrive for fruit and flower. That's a great one. Literally hose it over the foliage in that particular instance, and it'll release immediately into the fruit. Bit of advice. Okay, I think I'm going to need a glass of water, Shay. I'm just losing my voice a little bit here, and where are we? We're 7 minutes off the hour, so I've got a lot of questions to try and belt through as well. Recently started having issues with my kiwi fruit vines. This is Leon Jane. And I'm not sure where you are though. The kiwi fruit vines, they're second year in, and the males started showing signs of flowers this spring. All the leaves are wilting and dying off. After they dry off, there's a powder residue left as per pictures. All right, this is a bit odd. And with kiwi fruit, generally when you're actually seeing wilting, it's got something to do with the roots. Now, if I knew exactly where you were, it might help, because I could understand then what the current rainfall is. But are you at the moment keeping the water up to your vines is probably the thing I would say. The only other extreme with that is if it's just too saturated and sodden, but there's not too many places. Thank you, Shelley. There's not places now where that is going to be a problem. So I suggest that it's probably drying out. Get the water up to it, probably give it a good shot of sea salt, and that might help, Leon, because I don't think the white residue is anything to be concerned about at all. I don't think that that's what you've got a problem with. Okay, let me just work my way through here. Lynette. Now, Lynette, you've got a great last name, Hatzimihali, I think it is. I hope I got that right. You're in Sydney. After some advice on what to plant when to treat a peach tree to make sure there are no white worms in the fruit. All right, so we talked about this last week as well, Lynette. So the white worms you're talking about are fruit fly. So we need to get some fruit fly baits up, and you need to spray them at least once a week with success. Okay, that's the best advice I can give you, but it will control the fruit fly. Hopefully that helps. Jeanette Miller, you're in Pingelly in WA. Hello, mulch. What's the best kind of mulch? It will be in an area with fruit trees, plums, oranges, mandarins, lemons, strawberries. Cheers. Jeanette, you know what? This time of the year, I'm a big fan of straw mulches. So straw mulch around the base of the trees with some chicken manure on top of that. As it breaks down, it improves water holding capacity in the soil. It also provides nutrients to the roots. It's a really good way to go. Bit later in the year, we're talking about chunky bark mulches after that. So, you know, green waste is always good if it's really well composted down. But yeah, you don't want to muck around with it otherwise. Glenn Miller, g'day mate, how are you? You are up there on the Gold Coast and your lemon continues to grow and the drip line is a metre and a half over the grass area. I know lemons don't like root competition. Do I have to dig up the grass? So when feeding at the drip line with Treforte, I'm not feeding the grass as well. To be quite honest, you should try and keep the grass out to the drip line if you can, and then feed under that for your tree. I think that's probably the best way to go. And you just sort of said, as I write this, it does seem obvious. So yeah, keeping the grass away. You're quite right. You know, grass is a ferocious eater. It eats all the time. So it's taking nutrients out of the ground. And of course, we're talking about a lemon tree, and lemons are what I would call gross feeders. They require a lot of fertilizer. They require complex diets, so a lot of different variety of minerals in that soil, and if the grass is taking some of those out, your tree's going to suffer. So remove the grass, feed in the area under it, and your lemon will love you. Glenn, thanks so much for joining us. Margaret Campion, hello Margaret. I'm going to look at your question. You are in Belgrave. What plants and bulks are poisonous to, I'm not sure what bulks means. What plants and bulks are poisonous to our furry friends? My dogs and cats love rummaging through my garden. It's really interesting. Generally, plants that have got bulbs. Most bulbs are actually poisonous. So you don't want dogs chewing on bulbs. It will make their mouth swell up, and it can upset their stomachs terribly. In fact, some are incredibly toxic. So you do have to be very, very careful. As far as plants that can cause problems, one of the ones that does cause a few problems generally are grevilleas. If they're in amongst them, so if they're climbing in underneath a grevillea bush, a mature one, to keep cool, you know, they dig the soil and sit under there. Often the foliage can be quite irritating to the skin, so they can get rashes. But look, I mean, plants and animals have interacted forever in time, so it's more odd than normal. So yeah, I would think that I think we've got so many questions. You see, I've got Shaylee sending me messages through as we're chatting, and she's saying, we've only got 2 minutes. Can we go a little bit over time? We will go over time and answer all of these questions that sit here. Hopefully, Marg, that helped you with your pets. Bulbs definitely can be a big problem. So yeah, try and keep the pets away from them. Eric Aikens, you ask a very good question, Eric. Do locusts attract fruit fly? Here's an interesting thing about fruit fly. Fruit fly is attracted by colour. So there's three predominantly sort of colours that they really love. Yellow, they love orange, and they love blue. So when it comes to the blue, you can often find that the fruit fly will come in and stick to a blue trap or a yellow trap. So if you're putting sticky traps up, you'll find fruit fly will be attracted to that. But of course, as soon as they see that colour, there's a general comment there, colourblind to everything else. As soon as they see that colour, they'll try to sting that fruit. Good thing about locusts is it's got really a very tough skin. I don't know how to best describe what I'm talking about here, but it's got a really tough skin, and it's very difficult to penetrate. So it's unusual to see locusts actually stung. But if you've got a locust tree next to another fruit, let's say apricots, the locust will act like a bit of a beacon and bring the fruit fly in. And then as the apricots start to ripen, they'll be far more susceptible. So just be aware of that. Cassie Tang, hello, Cassie. How do you prune a locust if you're growing it in a pot? Well, actually prune regular is the key, and then stop pruning around about April, because that's when it'll start setting its flower. So every couple of months, just pruning small bits is probably a better way to go than when it's in a pot than pruning hard occasionally. How do you identify my lawn type? Some species do look so similar. Well, you're probably right. I think it's one of those things. Generally, the broadleaf grasses, there's only a couple of them that are out there. So buffalo is one, and kikuyu tends to be the other one. The fine leaf grasses can be a lot more difficult to identify. Take a photograph, send it through to us. I'll see if I can help you out, Rachel. Michael Richardson, hello. I'm not sure where you are located. You've got an interesting question though. Do you think all the chemtrails make it hard to grow some things? And I don't know about that. I'm not sure. There's certainly a lot of theories about that stuff. I'm probably not much of a conspiracy theorist, but anything that's in the air could impact certain things, I would imagine. But we would see mass extinctions if it was chemtrails, because there's so many planes moving through the air again. And Mark, you've got one more question from Belgrave. What are the differences between peony roses and how should they be looked after? So you've got perennials and you've got what we call herbaceous. Peonies are a little bit more challenging, and I've got to be completely honest, I'm growing some at home at the moment with very limited success. And it's not that they're not growing, it's just that it seems to take them a long time to get established. And I may not be cold enough where I live for them to produce flowers. They do like having that flower. And I'm getting some more messages here, so I'm going to just go back to them, I think. I'm not sure. Shaylee's moving the screen very fast. If I've got a very confused look on my face, that is why. Okay. So the answer, I suppose, Margaret, to you is that the peonies are all deciduous, so they'll all die down during the winter. The shrub forms, the woody forms, they're obviously going to stay a shrub, and they will come out and flower pretty quickly in the springtime. The herbaceous ones are also spring flower, later spring flower, and they will emerge from the ground. So hopefully that helps you a little bit, but it is all about getting the root systems established, and that can be a 3 to 4 year period from a new plant, just so you're aware. We have one more question, and I've got a funny feeling that this may have been a hijacked question. Shaylee from Perth. Hello, Shaylee. You've sent us some photos. Let's have a look. I've let my cabbage go to seed. The flowers have attention from bees, but when do I collect the seed? Actually, it's a really good question. I'm doing the same thing in my garden. One practice that I have, and one that maybe you might want to try yourself, is if you get a punnet of 10 or you plant 10 plants out, always let one of them go to seed. That way you can collect the seed. And the answer to Shaylee's question is, as soon as you start to see the stem dry off, you collect the seed, you pop it into a paper bag ideally, and you just crush it all up. And the seeds will be in there along with some of the carbon organic matter from the plant. And then at that point, you can take it, you can store it, or you can re-sow it. And the interesting thing about seeds is that, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but most of the seeds that we have are grown somewhere else in the world. They're not grown in our local area, but our local area has very distinct, unique environmental conditions. And what happens is when you grow a plant, it starts recording what those conditions are. It actually takes an imprint and it stamps that on the DNA of the next generation of the seed, so that seed will expect those conditions. So it'll perform better in your garden environment. And that's why collecting seed is a really good thing at home. So, if you've got old glass jars and you want to store that seed, then that's a good way to do it. But Shaylee, what you do is wait until you start to see it dry. As soon as it goes from green, that means that the seed is drying, hardening, and getting ready for collection. Okay, we had a really, really good day today. We've pumped through a lot of questions. I'm just looking at the numbers, and there's still a lot more coming through, and I will answer them, I promise, next week when we return. But that is the end of today's session. The winner of our $50 gift voucher from Garden Express. I think it's probably a really important question. J.E. Mybus, I hope I'm getting this right, J.E. You're in Victoria's Western District. You asked that question. Is there an insecticide that only kills first generation target? First generation, so basically kills the insect, then the insect dies. If it was eaten, it wouldn't poison the next plant or next animal on. And the truth of the matter is, most insecticides have some residual factor that's going to be ingested by something else that could harm its health, which is why I always suggest you be careful when you are using sprays. You do not want to get sprays on you. If you are spraying, which we have to do sometimes, some of your fruit and veggies, then be very much aware of what that spray is. Make sure you read about the period of time before you can spray again. Okay, it's a really important thing. A period of time before you can eat it, I should say. So that's a really important thing to be aware of. Don't go eating within that withholding period, because a withholding period is designed to make sure that the chemical has been naturally processed, broken down, and is now no longer at a level that could be dangerous to you. Good question. Really, probably not necessarily the answer that you want. That's why, I do tend to suggest wherever you can use repellents. If you can't use repellents, then use soft chemicals. And if it's really dire and you've got a really serious problem, then maybe you need to use something a little bit harder. All right. Well, we ended up going, I think, 10 minutes just about past the hour. So we've run a little bit longer, but we had a lot to cover today, and we'll be doing it again, of course, next week, next Friday. This, I think I'm actually going to be joining you from Singapore next Friday morning, which will be great, because I'll be back up there with what we're doing up in that part of the world. Just wanted to mention to you, of course, the Garden Gurus is back on Channel 9 tomorrow at 4:30 right across the nation. Please support our local gardening program. Australian gardening shows are quite rare these days. There's probably just us and Gardening Australia that are dedicated gardening programs. And of course, we're dedicated to helping solve a lot of your garden problems. So make sure you tune in. We're only on for half an hour. 4:30 Saturdays, Channel 9, unless you're in WA, I think it's 5:30 on Sundays. And of course, we're on 9 now, so you can watch whenever you want to watch, or 9 Live is repeats on a regular basis, and I think that's usually 8 o'clock Monday to Friday. So that's it. We will be back next week for another live show. Remember, if you want any more information, simply just visit our website. It's a great resource, thegardengurus.tv. Or if you want to watch some videos, of course, our YouTube channel. And again, that's thegardengurus.tv. Hopefully that helps. Good job, Shaylee. You got a number of your questions in today. She doesn't miss an opportunity. She does a great job. We're really proud of the team here. And Shaylee is a real champion. She does a great job and puts so much effort into this each week. I think she loves it almost as much as I do. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Trevor Cochrane. We'll see you next week for the Garden Gurus.